Hello again. We're ready to talk about chapter 4, or to read chapter 4. The title of this is Salted Chocolate. Ooh, doesn't that sound good? When we adopted our kids, we understood there was loss somewhere in the mix. This is the first grade math of adoption. No matter the age of the child, no matter the circumstances surrounding the adoption, no matter whether it's open, closed, or somewhere in the middle, roots have been pulled, and the process of transplanting a heart is bound to be delicate regardless of the soil. We knew to expect some sadness and complicated feelings along the way. We anticipated some rocks on the path toward our togetherness. What we didn't fully grasp was that adoption, our road to parenthood, would be a portal to understanding suffering. Choosing to walk straight into the white-hot pain of our grieving kids was an important entry point to the discovery that some of the best gifts are laced with the deepest sadness. For Corey and me, our faith, or at least our religion, had not equipped us to abide through the dark days. I was taught victory was the fruit of belief, suffering was a curse. Always proof of something, and never good. The pastors I knew said their faith could fix the middle-class kid who robbed the convenience store or the druggie with red-rimmed eyes. It could quench red-hot lust and pull the devil out of a teenager like long strands of ribbon from a Black Sabbath cassette tape. We'd been taught to avoid sorrow, to cast it out, and pray it away. No easy task when the earth seemed to spin on an axis of hardship. But I came to see that I didn't want a faith that could move mountains. I wanted a faith that could ride out a howling stretch of pain, keeping its spark through the low winds of drought. Years later, the church laid a weary eye on me and my uterus, empty as a secret. They offered special prayer services and pleaded with me to claim my healing as though I was dying or in some way broken. But somehow I knew grace when I saw it. You don't know what your family picture hanging on the walls of heaven looks like, but it's beautiful, my mother told me. The possibilities, still hazy, began to fill with color. Over the next 6 years, I was handed 3 babies, nothing between us but a promise. No history, no DNA, no sweet gestation where they learned to be soothed by my voice. They came with a sort of loss that fades in intensity but hides somewhere within their growing frames. Some nights their eyes get that faraway look, and they cash in my permission to stare through me to see all the might-have-beens for as long as it takes, knowing I'll be right there when they return. Their arrival was an invitation to taste the bitter along with the sweet, to swallow it down and let it catch in our throats, a gift that taught us not to wish for the lie of easy comforts. Between the exhaustion, self-doubt, and celebration of those early years, between potty training, sticker charts, soft blankets, warm from the dryer, birth families, peanut butter toast, slow healing, and pleading prayer, I was developing a taste for complexity. In the book of John, as through all the Gospels and the entire New Testament, Jesus promised the opposite of what the world offers like a prized show pony. He held up things like smallness, humility, suffering, poverty, and the guarantee of outsider status as though they were his best offerings. He knew what was at stake. He'd seen our wrong desires played out at eye level, yet he persisted. His life on earth was a decades-long exercise in rescuing us from the things we think we want by giving a face to the heart of God. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life, John 10:10, he said. His central tenets of belief never changed. Love the people around you. Be relentless in the pursuit of holiness. And, oh, by the way, it'll cost you. Say what? Here's what's hard to understand about us humans. Jesus couldn't have made himself clearer about the inevitability of hardship. Yet we are shocked when his promise rings true, when one of the gifts I'm handed looks like sadness, a lost opportunity, or something much worse like suffering. I usually feel ripped off. I keep trying to barter my perceived obedience for the sweet life. Isn't this what I deserve? Isn't the abundance best measured by the roses that grow, not the rain that grew them? Jesus was a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest grief. Yet Western Christians, on the whole, remain emotionally allergic to sadness and discomfort. We do anything we can to avoid it. Of course, we don't want to borrow trouble. I'm profoundly grateful for the grace of easy relationships and low-key days. It's not about craving pain or heaving around an outsized martyr complex. I don't want to imagine a world where it is the goal. We were made for contentment and celebration, yes, but that's not all. The health and well-being of our communities depend on our willingness to taste sadness with joy and pain, along with redemption. If we hesitate, hanging back when grief strikes, or feeling the wobbly state of our neighbors' lives might threaten our peace, we have closed the door on peace itself. C.S. Lewis reminded us that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. All throughout his time here on earth, Christ camped among the hurting. He didn't flee discomfort. He walked straight into it, then took off his shoes and stayed, accepting all of it as a gift and nourishment. He offers the same abundance to us. We can hear it, as Lewis says, so very clearly when we're willing to step into the pain. It was almost dusk when Corey saw our friend Jason trudging up the sidewalk, his earbuds jammed into his ears as usual. Pulling up to the curb, Corey swung open the passenger door and Jason hopped in. Young, lanky, and handsome with a wide, easy grin, I find him impossibly lovable. Jason is one of the people we've learned to carry in our hearts when he disappears for long stretches of time, holding on to him in ways he isn't even aware of and praying him home. Absorbing from a young age the message that he wasn't worth much and struggling to keep up with his gang-banging brother, he exists in the in-between of incarceration. For those with a record, there's no end to looking over their shoulders. Slipped beneath the microscope of our criminal justice system, it is a sobering reality that nothing more than a minor technicality or mistake wields the power to land them back on the wrong side of the razor wire. Like so many others we know, he rockets wildly between the hope of change and the plague of self-doubt. The jail seems to have a strange magnetic pull on him. The same force field that draws him back to its walls seems to repel him away from any steady job that comes his way. The plot point rarely vary, but this is his story, every bit as important to him as the threads of my life are to me. The short drive was all the time Jason needed to fill Corey in on the basics. "I'm making money," he chuckled, staring out the passenger window with lost eyes. "But I'm not working." 12 days later, Jason called, asking for a ride across town. This time, he was strung out and suicidal. Any hope he'd fought to hold was now circling the drain. I was already in bed when Corey came home and filled me in. Those were the nights when sleep felt most like the enemy. I tossed and turned, pounding my pillow, imagining his apartment just a half a mile away. Is he there? Is his mom with him? Does she know he's hurting? Does she care? For all the comfort close proximity can bring, when you find yourself fully sunken into the low terrain of no matter what love, for someone clinging to the far edge of wellness, on the worst nights, their despair can feel like the half-life of your own. We stare at the ceiling while our calls are ignored, and morning waits at the end of an impossibly long corridor. In his novel, Ordinary Grace, William Kent Kruger wrote, "The miracle is this, that you will rise in the morning and be able to see again the startling beauty of the new day." I suppose that's a mere lyrical version of my heart's crying during those wide-awake nights. That's the miracle I want most for my neighbors, to be startled by the beauty of this world and to see it as an expression of God's endless love for them. Here in the land of the living, we are learning that no work on earth is ever finished. There's no clear moment of day or night, just minutes spent sliding away from the sun and then back again. There's no clean cut between bad and good or lost and found. Most day, we're all a little of both, weary souls with failing night vision, just trying to make our way home. When I was a kid growing up in the country, my dad taught me that the best way to carry something heavy is to carry something equally heavy in the other hand. From personal experience, this applies to buckets of water, overstuffed suitcases, concrete blocks, grocery bags filled with large cans of SpaghettiOs, and dense emotions. Decades later, I remain a distracted and forgetful student of balance. Gratitude and sorrow aren't, as I once believed, mutually exclusive. They pair quite well together, one in each hand. It can be easy to ebb into the dark seas of sadness, staring too long at grief and disunity. The trick is to keep filling the other bucket. The sadness is real, but there's so much more to the story. Today I lost a person I was never brave enough to love. Today I'm a mom too tired for this tough parenting gig. Today my friend sends tear-stained text messages and I follow suit. Today my child is sick and no one can help him get better. Today jail turned to prison. But turn the page. Can you see it? Here our neighbors invite us over for their daughter's 12th birthday party, heaping our bowls with spicy broth. The rest of them chatter rapidly in Spanish while we gesture wildly about the delicious food, our eyes and nose running from the chilies. After dinner, they bring out the cake, and after another moment of discussion we don't understand, they sing happy birthday in English so we can sing along. Here, my addiction-afflicted soul sister shows up unexpectedly 2 nights in a row, bass pumping to give me a hug and keep her word. I walk back inside to my family watching TV, the smoke from her cigarette clinging to my sweater, and I can't help myself. I call it all good. Here, someone is hired, someone falls in love, someone celebrates 7 months of sobriety, someone gets out of jail, so we bake a cake and we plaster it with sprinkles. The way of resurrection is also the way of the cross, and it goes both ways. After a particularly gray season in our lives and neighborhood, a friend asked me with concern, "Are you still sad?" I responded truthfully, "Of course I am. I'm sad every day. I'm also happy every day." Isaiah 25:8 speaks of God swallowing death forever and wiping away our tears. Only recently did I discover that some translations read, "The Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces." A more obscure translation shows God wiping tears from every cheek. After a lifetime of hearing, God will wipe the tears from every eye. This feels like an important discovery. We aren't supposed to live dry-eyed. No, we're made to feel pain. It rends us from ourself. It smudges our view, hides us away. Once we understand that pain is not an indictment on our faith, we are at liberty to feel sadness with our joy, a sprinkling of salt on bittersweet chocolate. There, in its blending, we experience the solace of being stowed away in the shadow of God's wing along with everyone else. Jesus promised us an abundant life, but abundance implies everything, both the sweet and the salty. All of it counts toward aligning our character to Christ's. This is real wealth, the startling opulence that leaves us fully satisfied. We won't find it in manufactured heartache or attached to the end of sin. It's not darkness we're after. It's real companionship, the kind that stares at the ceiling until morning breaks, no matter how long it takes. That's the end of chapter 4. Next time we'll read chapter 5. Bring your coffee and join me.